Where are you?
Thank God I found you. Listen, can you meet me at Twin Pines Mall tonight? Your future on YouTube depends on it.
My future? What do I become, like an asshole YouTuber or something?
No, it's not about that. It's about your gear, Kyle. Something's gotta be done about your gear.
Doc, what's going on? Where have you been all week?
I'll tell you when you get here. Get here as fast as you can.
All right, I'll be there soon. Doc? Where on earth is he? Doc, what's going on?
I just got back from the future. There's something seriously wrong with your gear.
Doc, calm down. What is it?
There have been major advancements in the Sony full-frame line. In the future, YouTube stops using 8-bit codec and your A6400 becomes obsolete. It causes you to quit your channel, Kyle. Don't quit your channel.
And what am I supposed to do?
Well, I went into the future and I got you the new Sony camera.
Oh, far out. What is it, the A7S III?
No, you're not ready for that yet.
Oh, so it must be the A7 IV.
We're still waiting on that one. No, this is the A7S III with the Sigma 2470.
Whoa, heavy.
Well, this is a 2-pound lens, Kyle.
Doc, this has been out for 6 months.
Great Scott! What year is it?
It's June 2021.
And we have no time to lose. Well, you have to get home now and film next week's video. Well, I'll meet you in the future. Oh, one more thing. If someone offers you the Canon R7, don't take it. It'll spontaneously combust and burn your house down.
All right, you guys, can't even tell you how excited I am about this camera. I've been waiting probably about 6 months since the day they announced this camera to own it, and I kind of felt like the way this channel is growing, now would be the perfect time to pick up this camera. So Sony A7S III, this thing is incredible, and I don't even know where to begin on the main reason why I wanted this camera. So anyways, let's get this thing out of the box and see what we got here. Not really going to be an unboxing video, just let me grab this thing. Oh yeah. All right, let's get that out of the way. So Sony A7S III. Right now I have the Sigma 24-70 paired on this camera. So quite honestly, guys, this whole video has actually been shot on this camera. All of the stuff that was from last week's video and from this video, with the exception of right now we're shooting on the A6400, was with this camera. So let's get this thing off the spot here. This thing is a beast in low light. Just kind of like its predecessor, the A7S II. It's a 12 megapixel sensor. This thing is incredible at night. It has 2 base ISOs and S-Log3. You have the first one at 640, and then you have the second one at 1280. And what I mean by that is that once you start going up from 640, you're going to start introducing some noise in your S-Log footage. Once you get really close to 1280, it gets pretty noisy. But once you hit 1280, it completely clears up. And it becomes the second native base ISO. So pretty much when you start shooting at night, I kind of just go right away to 1280 and then control my aperture until this thing is in the right exposure. So let's get this stuff off here and kind of see what we got. So the A7S III, Sigma 24-70, this is what I've been shooting this whole video on so far. This thing is a pretty sharp lens. We're gonna be doing a full review on this lens as well pretty soon. But let's just get this off here. So this thing has a stabilized sensor which is one of the main reasons why I got this camera. My other cameras in the past, like the A6400, have not been stabilized. So having something that's stabilized is kind of a must at this point for me. I've been putting it off too long, having to use gimbals for almost everything. But this thing has 3 different modes of stabilization. You have the standard stabilization, which is going to get rid of all your micro jitters. You have active stabilization, which punches in about 10%, and it's another digital on top of the stabilization, which works really good for like walking, things like that. It still will be shaky if you push it too hard, but pretty much you'll kind of start to get pretty kind of gimbal smooth footage. It's similar to kind of what the ZV-1 has for stabilization. But then this thing has a third stabilization, which actually isn't having stabilization at all. So what you do is you turn off the stabilization on this camera, and then in post, you bring it into Sony's program called Catalyst Browse. And what this camera does is it actually records how you hold it, how it shakes with its gyro information. And in post-production, it takes that information and it stabilizes it better than most programs do, in my opinion. But it only goes so far. If you're doing a lot of running and crazy stuff, it's not really going to come out too well, and it's probably going to crop in too much, and you're going to lose some of that 4K footage. It's kind of a gamble a little bit using that style of stabilization, because if you get done and your footage is bad, you don't have any stabilization to fall back on because you didn't record with any. So for me, I'm pretty much going to be using active stabilization for the most part. If it's on tripods, like standard stabilization is just fine. So one of the big reasons I wanted this camera was the ability to shoot 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second in 4K with face tracking. That is a huge thing to have. All the other Sony cameras that I've had, they shoot 60 and 120, but they shoot it in HD 1080. And even then, they don't really have the greatest focusing system when they're in that mode. This camera solves that completely, and it shoots crystal clear slow motion. It's going to pretty much look exactly like the regular shots you're shooting in 24p in 4K, just in 120. There is a small little crop, but it's barely noticeable. I wouldn't even notice it unless someone told me. Shooting in that 120 frames per second or 60 is just gorgeous on this camera. You will want to make proxies in post though, because the 120 specifically on your computer is going to be really taxed trying to push that footage or grade that footage, or even just watch it back in your timeline. It's going to be a little choppy. The last video I did with the boosted board doing the grip tape, I shot all of that 120, and it kind of was a nightmare because I didn't make proxies for it, and it was very tough to edit because, like I said, it's really skippy and it doesn't have a lot of playback speed. But it is 4K 120 and 10-bit 422. And speaking of 10-bit, that's another huge reason why I got this camera. This camera shoots 10-bit 422. And what that kind of means for people who don't understand that, the A6400 we're shooting on is an 8-bit camera, which is roughly about 16.7 million colors, which looks good, but you can only push those so far in post. 10-bit, which doesn't sound like that much more, is actually like 1.2 billion colors. That is so much more capabilities of color grading. You can change your footage to pretty much look like any color you want and not really worry about it falling apart. That is a huge thing for this camera. Pair that with the dynamic range in S-Log3 of like 15 stops. So with the dynamic range, what this does is it basically captures your highlights and your shadows, squishes them so that you retain your shadows, you retain your highlights, and in post you just either do a conversion LUT from your S-Log3 back into Rec 709, and it'll give it a good base point to kind of start grading from there. Personally, using an S-Log3 conversion LUT myself makes more sense. And that's one thing, you guys, I did shoot this thing in S-Log3 on this video. This is my first time using S-Log3, so we'll kind of see how the colors come out. I'm sure as I go on, I'll get a little bit better with color grading myself. If you're using this camera, you're probably using S-Log3, standard profile, or S-Cinetone. Those are gonna be your 3 main ones. It does have all the other color profiles that the other Sony cameras have, but for me, I'm pretty much gonna use either standard, S-Log3, or S-Cinetone. The autofocus on this camera is just insane. You know, coming from the A6400, I do already have kind of one of the more modern autofocuses for this camera, but this does add eye tracking, face tracking. It adds eye tracking for animals in photo, not for video. So it's going to be kind of very similar to what they did with the ZV-1. This is going to have a lot of those features that that camera has, which is kind of surprising that it goes from a point and shoot all the way up to their high-end camera. But I'm sure that's something that when the A7 IV comes out eventually, we'll have it as well. The autofocus on this camera is really awesome. You'll be anywhere on the screen, it's going to get you in focus. One of the really cool modes that you can set on this camera though is you can actually control the autofocus speed. So you can have it go from slow, where you tap something in your background and it's going to slowly rack focus to that background, or you can have it be like lightning fast where you tap it, boom, it's in focus. And I really like that you have that control over this. And you also have the control of the sensitivity and stuff like that. One other really big reason I got this camera is for all of the custom buttons on the camera. You have C1, C2, C3, C4. The record button can be converted to a custom button as well. Your AEL can be converted to a custom button. You have a lot of ways that you can customize all your buttons to control all your settings on the fly, so you can really have full control over this camera without having to go in and out of your menus all the time. What I really do like what Sony did with this camera though is that they made all the custom buttons controllable for separate photo and video. So if you're in photo mode, all of your buttons are going to do one thing. And if you're in video, they might do completely different things. You can make them all the same, but for me, it makes more sense to have a few of the things that I want in photo on those buttons for photo, and a few of those on video that wouldn't make sense to have them on photo. So, and kind of the same thing goes with the function menu too. They have separated the function menu to be all your setup for photo and all of your setup for video. And like I said, what that does is it gives you the ability to have full control of your menu for each one of those photo or video. So Sony did come out with a new menu on this camera. The new menu is similar to the old one. If you're used to Sony cameras, you'll learn it pretty quickly. It is a little different at first, but it's a lot more controllable. I like that it's touch. You can touch the menu as well. And then just little things like instead of hitting the menu to go back to the screen, you can just kind of hit the back button. There's a lot of cool things with the menu that I think a lot of Canon users and stuff are going to actually appreciate and like going forward if they switch to this camera. It's a little bit of a learning curve coming from the old Sony menus myself, which I never really had a problem with. I always liked those anyways. But it's something to be noted that Sony probably will be moving forward with on all their other cameras, the new menu system. One really big thing on this camera that I really appreciate Sony fixing is the shutter roll. This camera does not have shutter roll, or if it does, it's almost next to nothing. And shutter roll, it's more than just this whole whipping back and forth. It's also just like moving from a car, filming stuff. On my old camera, like the A6400, if you're going fast enough, all your fence poles and everything start to kind of go sideways, and they're not straight up and down, and it takes away from what you're shooting. On this camera, you're not getting that problem at all. Like, this processor on this camera is like 3 or 4 times faster, so it's making it not get shutter roll as it's recording. And for me, that's awesome, especially if you're doing a lot of whip stuff. You're not going to get that crazy warping going on. On the side here, they went to a full HDMI cable, which is better than that micro HDMI. One real quick thing to note, with an external monitor on this camera, you actually do retain face and eye tracking versus like the A7 III. When you plugged in an external monitor, you lost face tracking. It kind of sucks losing a major feature like face tracking when you plug in an external monitor, especially if you're using this in a professional level where you will have an external monitor. This one does have a 3.5 jack for microphone in. It also has a headphone jack, so if you're behind the camera and you need to monitor all your audio, you can do that. This also has USB-C, which I like seeing on all these new cameras. I just like the joystick features and all the different layout that they have. This grip feels amazing, especially coming from like an A6400, which kind of did not have a great grip. And that really comes in handy when using these big lenses, big heavy lenses like these Sigma, to have like a good solid grip. One of the last things too that I'm going to be a huge upgrade for me is going from the old Sony batteries to the Sony Z battery. My old Sony batteries, it would take about 3 of those to equal what this can do. What that really means is I only need like 2 batteries and I'll probably be good for the whole day. But all right guys, so that's the Sony A7S III. Gonna be shooting with this lens for a little while here. I'm probably gonna be picking up a couple more lenses soon, so we'll do some reviews on those when I get them. I'm really excited to move forward with this camera as my main camera. I still will be using the A6400 and the ZV-1 for different things. In fact, I will be putting out a video shortly that's going to be a full shootout between this camera, the A6400 and the 6600, and the Sony ZV-1. So if you want to watch that, go down below and subscribe to this channel, hit that bell for notifications, and you will be notified when that video comes out. All right, you guys, so that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much to Andy Strano and RentDeLorean.com for letting us borrow the DeLorean time machine as well as your acting. Sorry guys, my acting sucks really bad and I won't do that to you too much going forward, but Anyways, you guys, thanks so much. If you guys have any questions on the A7S III, please leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, if you can hit that like button. And like I said before, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. And you guys also, thank you so much to all the new subscribers to this channel. We're about to hit 1,000 subscribers if we haven't already, and that's a huge deal to me. It's kind of a milestone for most YouTubers. And I couldn't do it without you guys, and it makes it really fun to be able to shoot these videos and keep moving forward and growing as a channel. So, all right, you guys, thanks so much. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.